So what's happened today following on from Trump's decision to put those restrictions on 7 countries, the ones that Obama had identified? Well, Donald Trump has fired the acting US Attorney General after she told Justice Department lawyers not to defend his executive order stopping people temporarily coming in from 7 Muslim-majority countries. That's the first "you're fired" we've had from Donald Trump, the first, I suspect, of very many. His own Attorney General will no doubt take over fairly shortly once he gets approval. And we also hear, following on, that MPs will debate whether US President Trump should be granted a state visit to the country after the petition now nears 1.7 million signatures. And this will be debated on the 20th of February in Parliament. And I'll talk in a minute a bit more about those 1.7 million signatures and who they actually are. But in Britain today, a Romanian lorry driver who smuggled 3 illegal immigrants into the United Kingdom, they were Albanians, and they were in the back of the truck. He's been jailed today by a judge, and the judge said Britain, like any country, has a right to control who may enter it. Do you agree with that statement, or do you disagree with that statement? Do you agree that Britain, like any country, has a right to control who may enter it? To get involved, you can call me on 0345 6060 973. You can text me on 84850. You can tweet me on @LBC. Don't forget the hashtag Farage and LBC. And you can watch the show live. Just go to LBC's Facebook page now. So the background is this 37-year-old lorry driver was stopped in northern France, approached by a people smuggler, paid some money. 3 Albanians were snuck into the truck. He got stopped when he got to Poole in Dorset, and this was the case that came up in Bournemouth Crown Court today. And Judge Brian Forster QC said this country, like any country, has a right to control who may enter it. Gosh, it restores all my faith in the judges, in the whole system. I'll never say anything again about the Supreme Court or all those things that perhaps I did ever so slightly moan about over the course of the last few weeks. And I'm also very pleased to say that the 3 Albanians were actually deported back to Albania. And I say that because our record in the last few years is that fewer than 1 in 4 people who are found illegally to be in the United Kingdom, whether they've entered illegally or whether they've applied for asylum and been rejected, fewer than 1 in 4 actually ever get sent back anywhere. So I think this is logical. I think it's sensible. I believe that majority mainstream opinion says that the judge is right, that we should be able to control who enters our country. And I bet there's loads of you thinking, yeah, I agree with that. But let me just add a little twist to this. If you agree that it's right that we should be able to control who comes into our country, do you also think it's right that Donald Trump should be able to control who comes into America? That's got 1 or 2 of you thinking, hasn't it? First we go to Peter in Rains Park. Peter, was the judge right?
Absolutely, 100% agree. Every country has not only has a right, but a duty to protect its borders. I just can't understand why you're kind of making something out of nothing, Nigel. It doesn't matter whether UK is a member of the EU or not, we still control our borders. And the judge is absolutely correct, and absolutely correct to deport those illegal immigrants. I don't think there is an issue here to debate at all. And another point I'd like to make about Donald Trump, yes, Donald Trump is absolutely correct about making executive orders. That's his powers, and he's exercising them. Even though I don't agree with him, this ban's going to work. And neither I do agree with the people who protest against him visiting United Kingdom, because head of states should not be obstructed for communicating with each other. And the only way we can make Donald Trump better by speaking to him and bringing some sense into him. And one final point about you, Nigel, is you were talking about hypocrisy yesterday. You're probably one of the biggest hypocrites in politics.
Oh, that's nice of you, Peter. No, go on, please. I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, because you spend most of your lives as a member of European Parliament, and you and your party has the fewest records of voting in European Parliament. You took taxpayers' money and failing to turn up to hearings, to committees, to votes, and you were coming here on the national radio and saying, "Oh, everyone's a hypocrite." You are the biggest of the lot.
No, Peter. Peter. Far from being a hypocrite, I have just helped to lead a campaign that means I've been sacked I am fired. I'm going. All British MEPs are going. I've campaigned to abolish my salary and expenses completely. It'll be zero from the spring of 2019. I hope that satisfies you and others. And by the way, I would point out that there are many UKIP MEPs who are amongst the highest attendees and voters out of the entire British delegation. But Peter agrees that countries do have a right to control their own borders. He even grudgingly, I think, thought that perhaps Donald Trump had that right too. I wonder what Joe in Brighton thinks. Is the judge right, or actually are we all, as a lady told me at a drinks party last night, are we all world citizens? Should we be free to move anywhere? Joe, what do you think?
I think that there should be a vetting process, but not a vetting process so you know who that person is. It's not specifically because they're from Albania, for example, in this instance, with these guys trying to come into the UK, being smuggled into the UK. But it shouldn't be just random with no statistics, no logic or rationality put behind the 7 countries that selected, where logic and rationality does stand with the countries that aren't on that list. That's my point here. So, and what I want to know is, how are you making this a fair comparison? 3 illegal people trying to smuggle into a country to 7 countries with all different types of people legally. I mean, with the legal process of how you would normally apply for a visa or whatever, they're not even allowed to do that randomly.
Joe,
it could be a Nigel Farage in Somalia, a Somalian...
Hang on. Joe, I was quoting you what the judge, Judge Foster, said today. Britain, like any country, has a right to control who may enter it. And I was saying, if that's a principle, does it apply to Trump as well? And the point, Joe, about that list of 7, and I do understand what you're saying. Lots of callers last night said there should be lots of other countries on that list. Lots of other countries, actually, that have sponsored or even turned a blind eye to terrorism, to ISIS, to extremism. The point, Joe, about the list is that was the list that was drawn up by Obama, who went before. So, whether that list is too long, too short, is a separate question. But it does get to this basic issue of you can't be a nation state unless you control your borders, it seems to me, Joe.
What my point is, it's almost like you're trying to justify Donald Trump's actions by using this as a comparison, which there is no logic and it's not a fair comparison.
Well,
it's not the same. And that's my point to you now. This comparison that you're trying to do, you're trying to justify Donald Trump's actions, as in if a British judge says we have the right to control our borders, which I agree, we do have a right to say who enters the country, but not randomly pick. For example, Somalians, I'm assuming Somalia and other countries that Egypt, other countries that are on the list, they have a mixture of people. So someone coming in from Egypt, right, you can say, what's your background? Oh, you're a normal average Joe working, a happy-go-lucky person. They'll do their vetting, even extreme vetting. If that person's got nothing to hide, there should be nothing to worry about. And again, you can have someone from Britain entering America and could have the worst background, criminal connection.
So, Joe, what you're saying, what you're saying, Joe, is judge people as people, not where they come from. Is that the point you're making?
Yes, because I'll give you a metaphor. Every house has a toilet. If I go to any country in the world, I'm sure I'll find very nice people and very bad people, regardless of their religious background, their ethnic or their cultural background. You have good and bad in everybody. And my point being, and my main point being, is you're almost trying to, because this British judge, which made a fair statement, we have the right to see who you are coming in and vet you and say to you to allow you access. That is logical.
So was, Joe,
rational.
Was this a very extreme thing that Obama did? I mean, is Obama a bad man for singling out 7 countries like this and saying America should take more action?
I'm not like British media with double standards. Yes, if Donald Trump done it and Obama done it, they should be held to the same standard and the same accountability.
Joe, you've made your point. Joe, you've made your point. You've made your point clearly and beautifully, and I thank you very much indeed. The first tweet that I got for you is, of course Britain has a right to control our own borders. So does every other country for that matter. That's in from Jeremy Wilson. Text, the judge is absolutely right. Of course we need control of our borders, and all of Europe should be doing the same. That's just stating the obvious. Alan in London. Nigel, when Article 50 came before the court, you were unhappy about pro-EU judges. So how can you accept Trump's politicisation of the USA judicial system? Cindy, we'll talk about this more because actually you're quite right. The Americans are used to a much more politicised system with their Supreme Court appointments, coming from either Republican or Democrat presidents. My slight criticism was that we just weren't used to them being politicised in any way at all. I wonder what Steve in Devon thinks. Was the judge right, Steve?
Of course he was, Nigel. I mean, just let me say, Nigel, well done for dedicating your whole life to this. Absolutely brilliant. Of course he was right. Of course he was right. Surely you've got the right to stop people coming in your home. I've got the right to stop coming in my home. Whether you like that or not, people have got to realise that, he's done that for a perfectly good reason, to keep his own citizens safe, surely.
Yeah, I mean, they've actually been arguing today, all of Trump's people, and they've been re-emphasising what I was trying to say last night. The word Muslim does not appear in the executive order. The word ban does not appear in the executive order. But, Steve, my previous caller, Joe from Brighton, said, of course countries have a right to control who comes in and they should judge people as people. But is it right that Obama led us down a path to what Trump did? Is it right to effectively say we're going to be more cautious about this country than that country?
Well, you walk down the street, maybe 3 or 4 people, one other person in that 3 and 4, to be trouble. So so of course we're right to be cautious about who's in what house and who's in the other house. I think Trump's a great thing for the American people, and it's about time somebody said, right, enough's enough. We have to stop this nonsense, and there has to be a start.
Well, Steve, I tell you what, he's certainly done that, hasn't he? And thank you for your call. And please, if you disagree with the judge's statement, if you're a world citizen, if you're one of those people that was out there last night protesting, please call me. You will get every opportunity to put your argument clearly. If you disagree with that judge, please give me a call. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show exclusively here on LBC. The time is 7:15.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
That Brexit bill, yes, that's still going on. And of course, Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn faces a rebellion from his MPs. They begin the process of the UK leaving the EU. Emily Thornberry, who joins me now.
In the end, the public wants us to leave the European Union. We have our instructions, but we do not give the government a blank cheque on this. We will be making sure that we have the right sort of deal, which is appropriate to the values of this country.
Some would argue, and you had a pretty strong Remain vote in your particular area, you're not representing the interests of your constituents here.
In the end, it's in the interest of my constituents that we pull together as a country and that we get the best possible deal.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC.
Estate agents? Who are they to tell you what to do? If you want to sell your home fast, for cash, speak to Property Rescue. There are no middlemen, just a genuine cash sale, which means you could exchange within 48 hours. I know, unbelievable. So, middlemen, schmiddlemen, speak to Property Rescue. They're buying houses all over Britain. Go to propertyrescue.co.uk. Property Rescue. Problem solved.
Do you have a pension? Maybe you've got more than one fund. Simply text the word YES to 83222 for your free PensionWorks health check. That's YES to 83222 today. Your pensions working harder with the PensionWorks.
A big night out. A lumpy bed. There are so many things that can keep us awake. But if you can't sleep because you're worried about paying the bills, we can help. Capitalise provides free, impartial and confidential face-to-face support to help people in trouble manage their debt. Find out more at capitalise.org.uk.
Westway. From the Juke to the Qashqai and X-Trail, at Westway there's an award-winning Nissan crossover to perfectly fit your lifestyle. There are also incredible deals to help you drive one away, like up to £2,500 towards your finance deposit and up to 3 years free servicing with Nissan Finance on Juke and Qashqai, 3.99% representative APR finance, and even 0% APR finance on selected crossover models. So get across to Westway. Finance subject to status.
Google Westway Nissan today.
T's and C's apply.
Cosy nights in with the curtains drawn, mugs of cocoa to keep us warm. Because really, after all is said and done, all you need is a special someone. And when it comes to finding something new, you can start the conversation at Hello You. Sign up and browse profiles for free at helloyoudating.com and start the conversation today.
This
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
So a judge jails a Romanian lorry driver who's tried to smuggle in 3 Albanian illegal immigrants, and he says openly in the court, Britain, like any country, has a right to control who may enter it. And I think that's absolutely bang on the money. And my sense is that pretty much all of you do too. Though I'm asking for people who believe that they're world citizens and we should have open borders. And I've tried to say, well, if it's okay for us, why is it not okay for Donald Trump in America to do exactly the same thing? And we've talked a little bit, have we not, about is it right to say one country is slightly more dangerous than another? Now, this, as we were on air last night, big demonstrations were taking place in London and many other cities across the country, and we have this petition which is calling on Trump not to be granted a state visit, effectively to be banned from this country. And I tell you what's really interesting about this petition and about the people that have signed this petition. 91% of the people that have signed this petition were the same people who signed a petition saying that Brexit needed to be stopped. It is exactly the same people. And the other absolute fascination about this is where these people come from. Now, there are some of these 1.7 million who come from overseas. But if you're a UK citizen and you're signing this petition, you have to put your postcode down so we can tell exactly where you come from. And do you know something? Nearly all of them come from London, Brighton, Cambridge, Oxford and Edinburgh. Out there in the shires, in the counties, virtually no one has signed this petition. It is remarkable, and it's so striking, it's so extraordinary that it is happening where basically there are big student populations, or in the case of London, a much wealthier population. But it is so striking as to be almost unbelievable. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this map up on LBC's website. Please go to lbc.co.uk. It is quite remarkable to see that really all of these signatures have come from a very, very narrow part of the United Kingdom, and they're exactly the same people that oppose Brexit. They seem to oppose almost everything that happened to the world in 2016. They want to wind the clock back. They want to start again. Bad luck, folks. We've moved on. But on this basic question of is it right that a country should control its borders, and does that apply to Donald Trump's administration too, I'm going to ask Ife in Maidstone what he thinks. Ife, good evening.
Good evening. Hello, Nigel. I think your characterization just there is actually quite disgraceful.
Go on.
You can't begin to impugn the motives of people who've actually signed a petition. You can't do that just because they live in one part of the country. But I think much more intellectually, I think two callers before me did take you to task, and you just didn't answer the question. The fact of the matter is, there's no doubt every country has the right to maintain its border and its integrity and security. But when a president of a country puts into practice something that is completely out of the norm, I call it alternative facts, and some of what you're talking about now is alternative facts, they have to be challenged. You actually are not engaged in an intellectual argument. You're actually appealing to people's raw basic instincts. And I think you should be very careful about that. You shouldn't do that. People have the right to disagree with you, but don't impugn their motives.
No, well, Ife, firstly, on the petition, all I'm telling you is these are the same people that oppose Brexit, and they all live in very, very few postcodes in this country, and that, I think, is a matter of interest. I haven't really commented on it, but it's very, very interesting to see the geography of that. Look, Ife, I mean, would you say that Obama was a bad man for singling out these 7 countries?
Nigel, listen for a moment. It might help you. There you go again. Listen.
Well, Ife, whether you like it or not, it is President Obama, all right? And I know he's seen to be the son of God by many, but it's President Obama that singled out these 7 countries and said we have to take action. And actually, America was already putting in place pretty extreme vetting for these countries, and what Trump is now doing.
Do you have any? I mean, do you have any idea? Do you have any idea how long it takes to become an American citizen?
Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard. Yeah.
Exactly. If you have such an idea, your job or part of what you should be doing is to begin to educate people that what's currently in place is actually so stringent. I know relations who've been there, and I can tell you it's absolutely stringent. So when you are, you have the platform of the media, use it quite constructively. Some of your comments are quite negative, and it's not right. You shouldn't do that.
All right, let me ask you a question. Do you think morally it was wrong of Obama to introduce extreme vetting in the case of these 7 countries? Should he have just treated these citizens the same as anywhere else in the world?
Listen, it's questionable, that list. There are so many countries that should be on that list. But I just want to end with this. I was listening to Nadim Zahawi on Saturday or on Sunday morning, and he had this interesting quote. If you continue to feed crocodiles with meat, they will eat the meat. But don't you think for 1 second that the crocodile doesn't want to eat you too? So the fact of the matter is, Donald Trump has said so many things, done so many things that makes people like me agitated and say, hang on a minute, when is this going to end? Is this guy really serious? Is this guy really serious? And what you're doing, you're pitting one against the other. Divide and rule.
Ife, you've made your point. You've made your point. I do not understand. Ife, thank you for your call. I don't get why when Trump does something it's bad, but Obama does something it's good. I really don't get that. Your Facebook messages, Clara Fox says, at the end of the day, who you vote for is a result of how people feel. America wanted borders closed. Well, maybe not closed, Clara, but certainly, to be pretty strict. Prim Maxwell says, in my view, most people are not saying he should not protect his borders from drugs, criminals and terrorists. It's just how he's implementing it. Well, Prim, you've got a point. I think maybe the marketing in the first 48 hours has not been very good. They've had to add quite a lot of corrections and amendments. And Jack says, I see it how it is. The British can control their borders, but the United States can't. Yeah, Jack, I get it. I wonder what Izet in Wimbledon thinks of this. Do we have the right to control our borders? Is Judge Forster right, Izet?
Yes, I absolutely support the judge decision. I think it's like we have a right concern about controlling our borders. It's not only for the security reason concern. It might be also in order to keep our Britain values or also improving our life standard in the UK.
Do you feel that there are too many people coming into the United Kingdom now?
Yes, I feel it. Being honest, I came to this country 15 years ago from Turkey as a businessman, and I can see the big difference in last, the decades, and I can see the big changes in negative way in the UK.
Yes.
Or in our lifestyle and the keeping the British values and comparing to 15 years ago, it's not the same, and the life standard is not the same as well. I think it's like we have a right to control our borders and keeping the.
Well, you've made that point, a very strong, argument for the British way of life and being responsible. So is Trump right, or Obama and Trump, are they right to have singled out these 7 countries and said that's where the problem is?
I think, I support Trump, but however, his last statement is not right. I don't support him. I don't think it's like the same as the UK decision, our judge decision, because the Trump, I think he's making his statement based nationality discrimination based on the people's race. I think it's against the international human rights. So we can't compare and deal with the same case with the UK, our judge decision. The Trump, I think, he's not making the right decision.
Well, I have to say, I'm sure that when we decide who can come here from outside the European Union, it may not be codified publicly, but I'm sure we are much more cautious about some countries than we are about others. But Izet, you made some really very, very interesting points there. Viran from Bristol, what do you think, Viran, about what Trump's done, what the judge has said today? What's your feeling?
Well, I buy everything you're saying about Obama, because before that there was Bush, and Bush was a bad man himself and probably got us into most of this mess anyway.
Yeah.
My point is here, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, the ones that are not on the list, are saying, Americans, get out of our country. I'd like to know what your view is on that, because actually starting an eye for an eye situation where, it's not going to really help our army, being sent over there trying to deal with countries we've had stable relationships with.
Well, there are plenty of parts of the world in which US citizens are genuinely not welcome. And you're probably right, Viran, that American foreign policy over the last couple of decades has directly led to much of that. Of that there's no doubt. I mean, would you, for example, with this list of 7 nations, would you have had more countries on that list?
Well, personally, I would feel like actually there's different situations going on that we're responsible for. And we've got really good border control and border guards in different places. And we can vet these people properly. Lists have just already come out about incidents that happen in America and how people die. And the lowest ones are people coming from abroad and killing those people.
Yes.
I think people have hyper-visualized the issue of 9/11 and saying we don't want another situation like that to happen. Well, the security is so high now that it's very unlikely that anything like that can happen. It's just it's divide and conquer and divide and rule now that we have.
I think, Viran, what changed the debate, and you're quite right, factually, absolutely, in saying that the atrocities in America in recent times have come from US citizens living in America and radicalised there. You're quite right in saying that. But I do think that what Angela Merkel did and the spate of attacks that we've seen, horrible attacks that we've seen in France and indeed in Germany, has changed the debate in America and played a big role, I think, in this election. So just to remind you, the petition map of all those that have signed the petition is up on lbc.co.uk. Look at it, it's fascinating. And coming up, we'll find out the latest from the Brexit bill that is being debated in Parliament as we speak. Right now, you're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively here on LBC. It's 7:30 and time for the news with Philip Chrysikos.
The Home Secretary describes Donald Trump's travel ban as divisive. Amber Rudd has told MPs it could provide the Islamic State group with a propaganda opportunity. The government says the point of no return has already been passed as it urges MPs to back a bill authorising the start of EU exit negotiations. Debates continue in the House of Commons this evening ahead of a vote on the bill tomorrow night. Almost 50,000 gay and bisexual men have been posthumously pardoned. Under the so-called Turing law, those convicted of offences which are no longer crimes have been cleared. LBC weather dry this evening with heavy rain spreading northeast overnight, a low of 5 degrees. Tomorrow the rain will ease to leave brighter spells for most, a high of 12 degrees.
LBC Travel. Good evening, I'm Andy Lake. Well, there are a couple of problems on the M25 this evening. Long delays anti-clockwise from junction 12 for the M3 to 9 for Leatherhead because a van's overturned. The inside lane stays shut. Also very slow anti-clockwise between 30 for Tilbury and 29 for Romford because of an accident in the inside lane. A breakdown earlier means the A1M is still very slow coming into London between junction 2 for Welham Green and junction 1 for the M25. In Canning Town, they're accused on the westbound approach to the East India Dock Tunnel because of an accident which is blocking one of the 2 lanes, causing delays from the Canning Town flyover. Byfleet Road in Byfleet has long delays eastbound on all of the approaches to the A3 at Painshill. A lorry broke down there earlier on. All lanes have just reopened though. In Lancashire, the M55 is crawling eastbound because of an accident between 3 for Kirkham and 1 for Fulwood. And as for the rails, it's been a pretty sorry day for South West trains. They still have delays of around an hour and some cancellations between Waterloo and Woking after a number of investigations earlier on today. For more real-time traffic updates, go to lbc.co.uk.
This is LBC.
Divorce. It affects every part of your life. You, your family, your home, your finances. And if you're a man facing divorce, perhaps even one you don't want, the situation becomes even more complicated. It's at times like these that you need a professional you can trust. Cordell & Cordell is dedicated to helping men in matters relating to divorce. Call now on 0330 60 60 161 or visit cordell.co.uk, office in central London. A partner men can count on.
Don't ignore the It's the law to have a work. Don't ignore the workplace pension. Get to know your responsibilities with help from the pensions regulator. Visit workplacepensions.gov.uk.
Fast Track Reclaim.
PPI, one question. Why have you still not checked if you're due a refund? Even if you don't know if you've had PPI, surely it's worth finding out. All Fast Track Reclaim needs is the name of your bank. No paperwork, no account numbers, just the name of your bank. We'll check PPI on every credit card, loan and mortgage you've ever had. Find out now. Text YES to 82727.
Fast Track Reclaim. Text YES to 82727.
If you own a Swiss watch and it's time to sell it, speak to watches.co.uk. The whole process runs like clockwork. Rolex, Patek Philippe, Omega and more. It only takes a couple of ticks and we pay immediately. Or if you just fancy a change, we could take yours in part exchange. From time on your hands to money in your pocket, it couldn't be easier with watches.co.uk. The pre-owned Swiss watch specialist.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
The Brexit bill is being debated in Parliament as we speak. It's going to be a 2-day debate, lots of MPs who want to get involved and engaged in this, and there'll be a vote at some point tomorrow. Many of us weren't happy that our say as the people wasn't good enough. But Theo, tell me, it sounds to me like there are very few Tory rebels who want to stop Article 50. How is it with the Labour benches today?
The Labour benches have been split today, and Sir Keir Starmer, the shadow Brexit secretary, stood up with Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour leader, staring daggers in his back, and said that this was a very difficult issue for the Labour Party. Cue lots of laughter on the Tory benches. There seems to be a reversal in fortunes when it comes to the issue of Europe. The Tories united, and Labour split right down the middle between Jeremy Corbyn and a few of his closest supporters and acolytes versus a large rump within the pro-European Labour MPs. And of course, some subplot to this is the Stoke-on-Trent by-election, which of course is a heavily strong Brexit area, and I'm sure voters up there will be looking on keenly to see what happens. There is, however, one Conservative rebel. His name is Ken Clarke, and he revelled in his Club of One.
I apparently am now being told that despite having voted as I did in the referendum, somehow I am an enemy of the people, ignoring my instructions to stick to the opinions that I was expressing, at least in my meetings, rather strongly, urging them to vote the other way. And I have no intention of changing my opinion on the ground. Indeed, I personally am convinced that the hardcore Eurosceptics in my party, with whom I've enjoyed debating this for decades now, would not have felt bound in the slightest by the outcome of the referendum to abandon their arguments.
Poor old Ken Clarke. He's lovely, really. At least he's consistent to his principles. I got the feeling, Theo, that he thought basically that countries should never have referendums because people aren't really up to making that decision.
Yes, there was a sort of, fair to say, a grudging respect, because as you say, Nigel, he's been consistent throughout. He didn't think there should have been a referendum. He opposed leaving the European Union. He always has done. And then, of course, now he's sticking to his principles. And because he's in that tiny club, of course, we might see the likes of, although Anna Soubry didn't say that she would join him, but we might see a couple of other Conservative MPs being picked off. But because it's such a small club, and this will go through tomorrow evening at around 7 p.m. on second reading, this was, if you like, a relatively relaxed debate. When there's when it's looking like it's going to be much closer, then things always tend to heat up in the Commons. Now, I don't know when you were out on the stump during that referendum campaign, if you were ever actually joined on stage or at a town hall meeting by John Redwood, Nigel, but he certainly has been listening to your friend Donald Trump and his slogan, this time coining the phrase, "Make Parliament great again."
And I had reached the point, Mr. Speaker, where if the country had voted Remain, I would have respected the country's judgment, and I would have not sought re-election at the next general election, because I see no point in this puppet parliament, this parliament full of views and airs and graces that cannot change the laws, change the taxes and spend the money in the way the British people want. And that is the liberty that we regain. This parliament is going to be made great by the people. It is going to be made great despite itself. It is going to be made great because the people understand better than so many of their politicians that sovereignty must rest from the people in this parliament.
Wow, I've got a bit wobbly. John, that's more UKIP than I am. Wow, wonderful stuff. I'm quite excited. Theo, prediction, how big will the Labour split be tomorrow?
I think there'll be around 100 to 150 Labour MPs, and that it will go through 450 plays 150, 200. So it's going to be a big majority for the government.
So the Labour Party, it looks like, literally split down the middle.
Yes, it's going to be split, and there will of course be some abstentions. There may even be a couple of resignations to go along with it as well. And it's going to be hard for the party. Emily Thornberry, when I spoke to her last week, was acknowledging it. Keir Starmer saying it today. The party's split, and it all plays into what's going to happen in Stoke, because there is going to be a test with the Labour in a Labour constituency.
Fascinating. Thea, we will come to you live tomorrow evening as they're going into the lobbies. Thank you very much indeed. Interesting. So Labour really, really got a massive problem over this. We've seen rebellions in the Conservative Party over the years on Europe. One thinks back 25 years to the Maastricht Rebellion, when about 30 Conservatives sort of went to the wire and opposed the government on the third reading, the last reading of the legislation. But if Theo's right, if out of their 232 MPs, up to 150 rebel, I think Mr Corbyn has got a real problem. But I'm going to return to the judge who jailed the Romanian lorry driver who had 3 illegal Albanians in the cab and made it clear that a country has the right to control its borders. We've talked about that. We've talked about it too in the context of Donald Trump, whether what he's done is the right thing or the wrong thing. And I wonder what David in Edgware thinks.
Yeah, so, hi Nigel.
Hello.
So I want to argue with what you said before.
Yeah.
Because I voted Brexit and I signed the petition yesterday.
Okay. Well, then you're one of the 9%, and that's fine, David, but 91% are an exact crossover.
But I'm saying it's a completely different reasons, Brexit and why I'm against Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I even heard an interview of you. I think I was on Fox News, one of the American channels.
Uh-huh.
They said they quoted that Muhammad is the second most popular name in England, and they asked you, is that the reason why you voted Brexit? And you said no, because we don't want anyone from the EU just coming with no borders. So it's nothing to do with Muslims.
No, David. What I said, when I was asked that question on Fox News, was whether it was the Islamic issue with so many babies being called Muhammad that had made me vote for Brexit, and I said my Brexit decision had nothing to do with the religion of Islam at all. Is what I said.
Yes. So it's Brexit is a completely different issue than Donald Trump's ban on Muslims.
Well, hang on. Whoa. And we are replaying last night a bit, David. Donald Trump has not put a ban on the 5 most populous Muslim countries in the world. He hasn't even put a temporary suspension on. If you are a British Muslim, you're quite entitled to get a plane to New York tomorrow morning. What Obama did was to identify 7 countries which, yes, do have Muslim majorities. It was Obama that said these 7 countries pose a danger. He put into place, David, a form of really quite rigorous vetting. And what Trump is doing is buying a further 90 days through this temporary suspension to find out whether the vetting should be tougher still. But are you really telling me, David, that you think as a result of that he should be banned from coming to our country?
No, I think I wasn't so angry of that. The main issue was that it was as if he made the executive order without consulting any of his staff. No one knew whether it would include people with green cards or the people who are people returning. It was just, when you make such a major decision, you have to speak to your staff. It's like his Twitter feed. He just says what's on his mind. He doesn't think. Whatever your opinions are, whether I agree or disagree with them, you have to consult with your team.
David, you make a very good point, and I think that Mr. Spicer, his press secretary, has had a pretty difficult and gruelling 48 hours, and thank you very much for your call. Tanya Melling on Facebook says, quite right, every country has the right to control their borders. Mark Atkinson says, as regards the online petition, you can vote as many times as you like, as long as you use a different email address. So how many people have voted more than once? That's possible, Mark, and many on it have come, I guess, from around the world. But, most people that sign online petitions, they're going to be honest about it, I think. Jack says, if the British government bans an elected United States president from visiting the UK, I think it's safe to say it would be the end of our 2 countries' ties. And Jack, there's a little clue in that. There are a lot of the Remainers who do not want us to have a closer relationship with America. They see our destiny as being part of European political Union. Tweet, Obama didn't do a ban like Trump has. Having a list of unstable countries doesn't mean banning people from there either. That comes from The Decider on Twitter. Look, the point is, Trump hasn't put a ban in place. Let's get that straight. It's a 90-day suspension. And Obama, let's be honest about it. Obama did, and we've had reference to this on the programme already, Obama did put, by British standards, very extreme vetting on people that come from those countries. So I'm asking the question, was the judge right to say we should be able to control our borders? And I'm going to ask Cass from Huddersfield. Cass, what do you think?
Hi, Nigel. I personally don't agree with what Obama's saying, basically. What Trump is saying. My question is, why is it that he chose those particular 7 countries and sort of jumped on Obama's bandwagon when, if there's extreme vetting to be done, why not go the actual extra mile and extremely vet everyone from everywhere rather than just those people from those particular countries?
Well, there is a logic in what you say, that and you're the second caller tonight that says, look, of course a country has a right to vet extremely, to be really cautious about who comes to live in their nation, but singling out countries is wrong. I guess, Cass, the reason is they are countries in which, there has been too much terrorism taking place over the course of the last few years. Simple as that, really, isn't it?
Well, not really. If you look at it from the stance of, for example, if you look at 9/11, for example, where the hijackers were from, they're from Saudi Arabia as well. But why not basically extremely vet them instead of extremely vet other countries, for example?
Honestly, I can't answer that. This was work that was done during Obama's time, which Trump has picked up and moved on with. I don't think any system is going to be perfect. I suspect that if you extremely vetted everyone from all over the world, it will become such a cumbersome process. It'll be hard for anyone, really, to get into the United States of America. I'm fascinated as to whether it's right, whether it's wrong. And it's interesting that people like Cass ring me and see, maybe there should be more countries on this list, including Saudi Arabia. Right now, you're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively here on LBC. It's 7:45.
Coming up at 8 on LBC, Clive Bull.
The SNP and Lib Dems are attempting to block the Brexit bill. Is there a case for MPs voting against Article 50 if that's what their constituents want?
Clive Bull on LBC.
The secret's out. Ray Morris Automatic Cars have been selling cars for over 50 years. With ultra-low mileage automatic cars from £5,000 to £25,000, they have the make and model to suit your budget. Ray Morris Automatic Cars in South East London, 10 minutes from the Dartford Tunnel. With over 300 automatic cars actually in stock, buy one today and drive it away. AutomaticCarSpecialist.com, the not-so-secret home of automatic cars.
Landlords, Direct Line guarantees to beat other insurers' renewal premiums for the same cover. Can your insurance do that? Switch to Direct Line Landlord. New customers only. Qualifying criteria apply. Underwritten by UK Insurance Limited.
I know how to avoid a soggy bottom. I know the name of cinema's most famous white shark. I know all the things you can do with a Maris Piper. And I definitely know the TV show that made this music famous. But I don't know my state pension.
There's a simple way to find out when you can get your state pension and how much it'll be. Search Your State Pension and get to know yours.
I was kind of restricted in what I could eat. I had loads of discomfort. It really got to a point where I needed to have my teeth restored.
If it's time for dental implants, talk to Darwood and Tanner. Their pioneering treatments have helped many patients who thought having permanent teeth again would be impossible.
Having all of my teeth restored just gives you the confidence and the feeling of when I was younger, having fixed teeth.
Visit whenyousmile.com.
Do you have a pension? Maybe you've got more than one. How do you know if they're in the right pension funds, making as much money as possible for your retirement? Answer is, you probably don't. At The Pension Works, our fully qualified independent financial advisors could add instant value to your retirement fund. Simply text the word YES to 83222 for your free Pension Works health check. That's YES to 83222 today. Your pensions working harder with The Pension Works.
When you need more space.
Think creatively. What could you use a log cabin for? A studio? A home office? A den for the kids? Creative Living will design and build a log cabin to suit your needs, even taking care of electricity and climate control. See for yourself at our 3 large cabin display villages in Surrey. Find out where at creativelivingcabins.co.uk.
Your own log cabin, handcrafted, the creative living way.
The Nigel Farage Show. Text 84850.
So Judge Brown Foster says, as he jails a Romanian lorry driver for 2 years for bringing in illegal immigrants, he says this country, like any country, has a right to control who may enter it. And I think he's right. I think most of you think he is right. And yet the odd thing is, somehow, when Donald Trump tries to do this, people tell me it's wrong. I'm not getting it. What am I missing? Damien in Chingford, what am I missing? What am I getting wrong here?
I think that everyone's getting it wrong. It's quite funny, really, because obviously, when did Obama write up this list?
Oh, this list was drawn up some months ago, and in fact, it has been acted on because if you're trying to get into America from those countries, it takes a long time. It's very difficult.
Yeah, because the thing is, I think that what people are missing is, in terms of keeping his people, his voters happy. Obviously, all of them countries that are listed have got no relevance in terms of the terrorism and everything else that comes with it. But obviously,
well, I'm not sure about that.
Well, when you look at all the past atrocities and stuff, none of them have actually come from them countries. But where I'm going with my point is obviously because you have the borderline kind of white supremacist groups, and then you've got the white supremacist groups who expect him to fulfill what he was meant to fulfill. He thought, what I'll do is I'll just throw in these countries that Obama has listed up, because with Saudi Arabia and that, they've got a lot of investment in America.
Damien,
yes.
How many white supremacists do you think there are in America?
No, but where I'm going with my point is, obviously, I mean this, I don't even mean it with the greatest respect, because a lot of them are kind of a bit stupid, but those who follow that kind of thing, they expected actions, and now they're all throwing parties. Oh, yes, we're getting rid of all the Muslims and all that kind of nonsense. So where I'm going with my point, is when you think about it, if he was really serious about stopping so-called terrorists coming into America, he would have went for the countries where the past people have come from. Mm-hmm. But what he's done is he's just sweetened up that little small minority by saying, look what I've done.
Well, Damien, he may well decide in 90 days that the vetting that is put in place from those 7 countries actually is sufficient. He may well decide that. He may well go a little bit further. He may well add other countries to that list. And certainly, from all the calls I've had in the last couple of days, Saudi Arabia, if there was a poll amongst LBC listeners, Saudi Arabia would be top of the list. But Damien, honestly, Trump is not trying to please tiddly groups of white supremacists. There aren't many of them. What he's trying to do is to hold faith with the tens of millions that voted for him by showing them that if you vote for Trump, you get what you voted for. And you know what? Boy, he signed a lot of executive orders last week. We've had some criticisms about a lack of detail, and that may be true. But in terms of direction, he is going to honour his manifesto. Of that, I've got no doubt. I wonder what Pauline in Bethnal Green thinks. Pauline, good evening.
Hello, Nigel.
Hi.
I think you're wonderful, by the way, and I'm truly grateful for everything you've done for our country.
Well, I've had so much abuse tonight. You're a real welcome relief, Pauline. But I've got one here. A tweet just come in. It says, Obama is no longer the president. Address Trump and his actions. You fool. Now, I don't normally read all. So this is why it's so good to have you on, Pauline.
Right.
So tell me, is it right to control our borders? Has Trump done something awful by saying what he said?
No. All countries have the right to protect their borders, and they absolutely have a duty. And to be honest, countries like Somalia, which are in chaos, they have no proper government, no real system, no real databases. It's impossible to verify the identity of asylum seekers from Somalia. You can't really tell, you can't ever really know if these people have ever committed crimes, because there are such poor records there, if any. So you can't use the same system of vetting for Somalia that you would for Pakistan, because Pakistan will have much better records. So I think it's fair to put Somalia on a high-risk list. Now, it will be quite similar, I think, with countries like Syria or Iraq or Afghanistan, because although these countries are advanced, they've nevertheless either are in conflict right now or they have been recently. So a lot of their systems won't be in place or things will have been lost. And so, again, there may be real problems verifying the identity of asylum seekers from these countries. And again, knowing their character and possible criminal history.
Pauline,
and so, I think more serious vetting is needed for those types of
Pauline,
countries.
you win the prize. You win the prize for the most logical phone call during the course of this hour. And if you ever stand for election in the district where I am, I will certainly vote for you. I think
Nigel, I've just bought your book as well, and I really look forward to reading it.
Well, I'll look forward to buying yours in a few years' time, OK? Because clearly you've got what it takes. Superb. Thank you. Text, Nigel, Donald Trump has done more in a week than our useless politicians do in a lifetime, says Laura Davis from Shenfield in Essex. Stop talking about Obama. His list of countries is not a ban. It's a list of countries. Trump has just used a list Obama made for almost entirely different purposes. No, he hasn't. You can't defend Trump by attacking Obama. John in Bermondsey. John, no! Come on, can we please get real about this? Obama had brought in very tough vetting, and what Trump is now doing is assessing whether it's tough enough. And as Pauline, who just called in, said, you know, if you're dealing with equivalent countries, with comprehensive police records, where, you know, intelligence services can speak to each other, that's one thing. But if you're dealing with third world countries with very little data on individuals, surely you have to go the extra mile. Pamela Hicks says on Facebook, I have a fence round my house that allows me to invite into my garden those that I know and want. Should I take my fence down and allow anyone in? Discuss. Well, I think, Pamela, the people who were out in Whitehall protesting last night, who I begged to come on the show, who I've implored to ring today, and I haven't heard from any of them. But I think, Pamela, that it is wrong that you should have a fence around your garden. Surely, for you to think that that parcel of land somehow is yours, shouldn't you be sharing this with everybody in this country, if indeed not the rest of the world? At least that's what some would argue. I wouldn't myself. I wonder what Richard in Pembroke makes of the Trump row, the controlling of borders, the vetting, extreme vetting perhaps of 7 countries. Richard, good evening.
Well, actually, what I wanted to take you back to was the statement you made earlier about the correlation. In fact, on your Facebook page, you said massive correlation between the people who voted to remain and those who voted to leave compared to the petition.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned London, Brighton, Edinburgh, I think you might have said Manchester.
Oxford, Cambridge,
quite a sizable amount of the population. But I'm wondering if you could break that down into actual percentages for me. Otherwise, it's a bit like a man in the pub story, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What percentage of people voted in those cities or have put their name on that petition compared to the people in the shires, as you said? You know, it's kind of a bit of a dog whistle thing, isn't it? You know.
Well, go to LBC. Richard. Go to lbc.co.uk and you can work your way through it, and you'll see that vastly, overwhelmingly, not only were 91% of these people the same people that had voted to stop Brexit, but that over 90% of them live within actually a very, very small number of postcodes. Have a look at it, Richard. That's why I've put it on the website, and I think people will find it really, really interesting. I wonder what Martin in Huntingdon thinks. Martin, should we be extreme vetting from those 7 countries?
Absolutely, and more than the 7. Just quickly, Nigel, I've been a UKIP member for quite a few years now as well. And I've seen you a number of times, and there's nobody in this country who speaks like you at a public meeting. Anyway, very, very quickly, I think absolutely. And these people who are protesting about Trump coming over, meanwhile, these people actually applaud some of the Nazis who's coming over, who actually get stopped, thankfully. But yet at the same time, they've got the Holocaust deniers. They've got Hamas and Hezbollah speakers coming over. You very nicely mentioned about Jews from Israel not being allowed into many of the Muslim countries. In fact, You don't have to be Israeli. Just being a Jew is enough.
Well, Martin, you know, the Mayor of London tonight, who has been really critical of Trump and wants him banned, is attending a press reception, sort of a social reception, where he's going to meet the leaders or the representatives of 11 states that ban Israeli Jews from going to them, and he has no problem with that. I can't work it out. Martin, thank you. My final thought on this is, not only is the judge quite right, but actually Obama and Trump were right too. There are parts of the world that pose us a greater danger than others, and it's the first duty of government to protect its borders and look after its citizens. And whatever the protests, whatever the noise, whatever you get from the media bubble, believe me, bigger and bigger majorities of people in Britain and America will support tough security, believe we should be in charge of our lives. You've been listening to The Nigel Farage Show here at LBC. I'm back tomorrow evening live from Brussels at 7. Coming up at 10, it's Ian Collins. But up next, it's Clive Bull.
Thank you, Nigel. So as MPs continue to debate the Brexit bill, the SNP and Lib Dems are attempting to block it. Labour have a variety of opinions. Is there still a case, do you think, for MPs ever voting against Article 50? Maybe if that's what their constituents want? Labour, as I say, not entirely united on this issue. We will be finding out how some of its MPs are planning to vote. And then